Olá a todos e todas, estamos aqui no BDF Entrevista, estreando uma edição especial do programa que você já conhece. Esse é o BDF Entrevista Internacional. Uma vez por mês, vamos trazer convidadas e convidados de fora do país para debater temas globais. E para essa estreia, vocês estão vendo, estamos num cenário novo, aqui na Escola Florestan Fernandes, um importante centro de formação do campo popular. E o nosso primeiro convidado nessa estreia é o político alemão Heinz Bierbaum. Nice to have you with us here, Mr. Bierbaum.
Thank you very much.
Heinz Bierbaum é um político alemão presidente do Partido da Esquerda Europeu, que agrupa 26 organizações políticas e elegeu 38 deputados ao Parlamento Europeu. Bierbaum também acaba de assumir a frente da Fundação Rosa Luxemburgo, vinculada ao partido alemão Die Linke, à esquerda, uma organização sem fins lucrativos que financia projetos que discutem democracia, igualdade e alternativas ao sistema capitalista. Well, I would like to start our conversation talking about, in 2019, you took the leadership of the European Left Party.
Yes.
And at the time, you mentioned that this group of parties and forces, they had a challenge, right? Two great challenges: to offer as a left group, as a left set, a political alternative in Europe, and specifically talking about economy. You talk about how to attack austerity and to have more public investments. And also the second challenge was how you can counter the far-right growth and political groups. Looking back now, and this is like 2 years and a half, 3 years, how do you assess conquests but also challenges that still remain?
You are perfectly right. We have really two challenges, big challenges. Strengthening the political profile of the European left, to propose an alternative concerning the European policy, to make another policy concerning the economy and the social situation, social policy. And of course, one of our main objectives is to fight the far right, because we have the rise of the far right in Europe, not only in Europe, also here. And therefore it's a big challenge for us. Concerning the period, I was elected 2019. Now we have, of course, a very difficult situation, first caused by the pandemic and then by the war in the Ukraine. And therefore it was quite difficult. But I think we succeeded in some things, because we strengthened our political profile, and we proposed some very important political elements for an alternative in the policy of Europe. We elaborated a document how to tackle the pandemic, and we said the first thing was to combat the pandemic, to protect the people. That's very important, and we made a campaign to have a free access to vaccines. I think that was very, very important. The second element of our policy concerns the necessary necessary ecological social transformation of the economy, because we don't have only the challenges caused by the pandemic and by the war in the Ukraine. We have really very profound upheavals caused in particular by the ecological challenges like the climate crisis. And therefore we need an ecological transformation of the industry, but we don't need not only an ecological transformation, we need an ecological social transformation, because we have to combine from a left point of view, to combine ecological and social dimension. We know we have to change our way of production and of consumption, but we have also to protect the people, in particular the workers affected by this process, and therefore we talk about ecological social transformation, and a very important concept for us as a point of reference is the trade union concept of just transition. This is a combination between the social and the ecological dimension. Concerning the war, that's a real problem also for the left in Europe, and it's quite clear for us that we all condemn the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, but we are also very critical with the policy of NATO, which is really very aggressive, and therefore we are committed to peace, we are committed to disarmament, and therefore we are fighting for a peaceful solution, because a war is never a solution in our opinion. We need more negotiation, we need more diplomacy, but today it's very difficult because the majority of the people is in favor of sending arms and so on, and we are against, because this is not a solution. We need a political solution, and we have also to talk about a new collective system of security in Europe. We are starting with these discussions. That was certainly a deficit in the past, not to have elaborated another system of collective security.
So you brought up the question of the war in Ukraine, so I would like to assess a little bit more of that. Talking about the positions maybe within the left, do you think that the war in Ukraine divided? Because you have different positions.
Yes, we have different.
Regarding some of the themes that you talk about, like security. How do you debate the expansion of NATO, and how do you look at what Russia is doing? Do you think it divided politically? You see this as a problem that should be dealt with in the coming years?
It's a real problem for the left. It's because we have indeed different positions. We are all committed to peace, but that's not enough. We have different positions concerning sending arms. We have different positions concerning the sanctions, because a part of the left is in favor of sending arms, in particular the Nordic left parties, and also the question of NATO. It's a challenge for us, because normally we have been always very critical concerning NATO, and therefore we organized last year and also this year a counter summit at the occasion of the summit of NATO. We called it this year, it was in Madrid, Peace Summit. But now a part of the left in Europe, in Finland in particular, is not really in favor of NATO, but it's not against. It's not against that Finland will join the NATO. That was for us impossible in the past. And now we have this new situation and we have to discuss it. But I'm optimistic to reach common positions concerning war and peace, because I think that's really very characteristic for the left, to be committed to peace. That's really very, very important for us. And we are against of increasing military budgets, because each cent for the military budgets is a cent lost for fighting the climate crisis. We have these contradictions that we need a huge amount of money to fight the climate crisis. We have to change economy. We have to make new huge investments concerning a new energy policy, a new mobility policy. And now we are spending a lot for military, and I think that's a contradiction, and therefore I think in the end we should have a common position in the left to fight the climate crisis and to fight for peace. And of course we have to overcome these differences, and this will last certainly a certain period. Today it's quite difficult.
Still on the subject, there's also another crisis, and I think Germany is in the center of that, about fuel and energy. That and also that's what I wanted to talk about. You have this concept that is really important for you, the social ecological transformation of industry, right? But that also tackles we should deal with the way we produce stuff, right? As you said, there's a lot of changes that should happen. But on top of capitalism that already impose a lot of challenges, now you have sanctions over Russia, which affects energy and energy supply. How do you see this challenge? How you can deal with that in the short term, but also not losing what you're looking in the big picture?
That's really a big challenge. It's a very difficult situation because the effect of the sanctions, of the European sanctions, and all of the other countries concerning Russia, we have some counterproductive effects because we have a problem of energy and we have, in consequence, increasing prices. We have skyrocketing prices of energy and also of food. That's a real problem, and therefore we have to fight to keep down the prices for energy and food. We have to protect the poor, we have to protect the people living and working under precarious conditions, because they are the most hit by the effects of these sanctions. Also, the question of sanction, we have different positions in the left, also in the German left, on the European left and in the German left. Some are in favor, but now we see some counterproductive effects, and therefore I think in the short run it's not possible to be totally independent from the energy coming from Russia. I think that's not possible, and therefore we have to talk about this, and therefore I think we need to talk with Russia. We have to have negotiations about this. There is no alternative to this, because if we continue with the sanctions, and there are some exceptions already, because it was never a total boycott of energy coming from Russia. There was always a part paid also by Germany for energy, for oil, for gas coming from Russia. And therefore we have a debate about that. And I think there is no possibility in the short run. Of course, we have to be more independent. And plus there is another question, because gas and energy are fossil energies. And therefore we have to change our energy policy to renewable energies, from wind, and so on. And therefore, but this is not only possible not in the short run, more in the long run. And we have to make more efforts to change our energy policy. That's true, that's the consequence. But in the short run, we need still some energy coming from Russia. Now we are getting also energy, oil, from fracking gas, fracking oil from the US and other states, and that's concerning the environment. It's a huge problem, because it's damaged the environment. Fracking is not an alternative. We need another energy policy, and therefore we have really a lot of contradictions.
Changing a little bit the subject, talking about far-right groups in Europe, you have in Germany the Alternative for Germany group, right? And they defended, advocated recently for racist, anti-Islamophobic agendas, and more recently anti-vaccine, right? So I would ask you first, what is the status today, do you believe, of this group in Germany, and if they could grow and maybe join forces with other groups like Vox in Spain, or governments like Orbán in Hungary, or Salvini in Italy?
We have a big problem in Europe and also in Germany. In Germany we have the Alternative for Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, and they don't grow anymore. That's good news. Bad news is they are really a very stable political factor still. And therefore we have still to fight against the Alternative for Deutschland and against the far right and the fascist parties in Europe. For example, in Italy now we have a big problem, because it could be that in the next elections the far right will be the first party in Italy, and perhaps we will have a prime minister coming from Fratelli d'Italia, and Fratelli d'Italia is really a post-fascist, or I would like to say a fascist party, and that's a big problem not only for Italy, that's a problem for Europe. We have, I think, let me say, a dialectic situation. I refer to the elections in France. We had recently the elections in France with a big success of the left, because the biggest party was NUPES, the new coalition of the left. The party, it's not a party, it's a coalition, and therefore we have had a big success of the left in France. But on the other hand, we had also a big success of the far right, because also Marine Le Pen and Le Rassemblement National, the really very extreme right party in France, had also a success. So we have this contradiction, or I would like to say this dialectic situation, and I think the best against the far right is a strong left, and that's our objective, our aim as European left, to becoming stronger. And that was also my challenge when I was elected president of the Party of the European Left, and I said we have to strengthen our political profile, as I said it before, because it's very important to have a strong left, but we have also to strengthen the cooperation between the left forces, the other progressive forces, and also the ecological forces. And therefore we make always an annual European forum as a platform for the political dialogue between the left, progressive and ecological forces. I think we need a broad cooperation. And now we have still the alarming situation of the rise of the far right, and therefore the reasons for the rise of the right are the deficits of the neoliberal policy, and therefore we need an alternative in policy. And there we are fighting as European left, as German left, for another policy, for an alternative. And I think the main elements of this policy are to have another economic policy, to abandon neoliberal policy, because it causes big social problems, not only social but also economic problems, and therefore this is the reason for the rise of the far right. And therefore we need another policy to abandon the neoliberal policy, to have more public investments, for example, as you mentioned at the beginning, and we need this social ecological transformation, and we need also to defend democracy. This is another very important element, because democracy is really in question by the politics of the far right. You see that very clearly in Hungary, for example, also in Poland, and of course peace is also a very important for us, and the fight for equal rights for a society of all.
Getting a little bit out of Europe, how do you see the effect that recent elections could have? What kind of effects these elections could have in Europe? So I'm talking about Brazil in the short term, but also the prospect of elections in the United States in the future, the right going back with a figure like Donald Trump going back to government. And we had some good news also in Latin America with Petro in Colombia, with Boric in Chile. How do you see these movements and how they could affect, because as you said, we need a strong left to fight capitalism and the far right. How do you see these movements in the effect they could have in Europe?
I think these movements are really very important also for us Europeans, and therefore we have a very close relationship with the left in Latin America, for example. And I think in the last years, in the last month, we had really very good news. As you mentioned, that in Colombia and also in Chile, and we hope that the referendum in Chile on the 4th of September will be positive for the new constitution. I think that will be very, very important, and I think the change in Colombia is really historical. It's something new concerning in particular Colombia, and I think it's very good. And now the elections in Brazil are of great importance. We all hope that Lula will be the next president in Brazil, because I think if there will be a victory of Bolsonaro, it would be not only very bad for Brazil, also for us, also for European, because there will be an X between Trump in the US and Bolsonaro here in Brazil. It's just a very strong cooperation between the two, and that's real a problem. But and concerning the next elections in the US, they will be really also very, very important. I don't hope that Trump will be the next candidate for the presidential elections in the US, but you never can. You never know what is going to happen in the US, and I hope there will be an alternative. For me, it's very important the left in the US. We have a very good, as European left and also as German left, we have a very good cooperation with DSA, with the Democratic Socialists of America, and I hope they will increase their influence in the Democratic Party. That's very important. Sanders was certainly a point of reference, but we need a more strong organization of the left in the Democratic Party, and I think that would be not only that would be very important for the left and democratic forces. I would like to say also for the democratic forces in the US, and that will be had a very positive influence concerning Europe. That was going on in Latin America. 2-3 years we had a total different situation, because there was a wave of the conservative, of the right-wing forces. And now we have a new situation. After the elections in Chile, with Boric as president, with all the contradiction they are, as it's quite normal, the situation in Colombia, very difficult situation, unfortunately, in Cuba. It's suffering the blockade still. I was in February in Cuba, and I saw the high inflation in Cuba. That's really hits the people, and therefore we have to work to against the blockade of the US concerning this. And Brazil is decisive. The elections in Brazil, I think it's decisive. For Brazil, for Latin America, it's of global importance. It's also very important for us in Europe. Let me say some sentence concerning Europe. Coming back to the war in the Ukraine, we have a very, very difficult situation concerning the European Union, because the European Union today is only an ally of the United States, and the European Union should play a more independent and more autonomous role. I think that's a very big challenge, and we need that, and therefore I think, and if the left and the progressive forces also in Latin America will succeed, this could be, or it could have also a positive effect on Europe, on the European Union to be more independent, more autonomous.
So we'll talk about the division of the left in Europe and all the contradictions that are posed nowadays. Thinking about this picture that we have, what are the political forces that we should look at in Europe, the left ones, that could achieve something in their countries and also to contribute to this union? And also, what are the pressing themes, if you could choose like some of the most important things that should be dealt with in Europe today, what would that be?
I think concerning the situation in Europe, unfortunately the left is not very strong. And in the European Parliament we have quite a small group. It's not very big. But on the other hand, as I mentioned before, we have another situation now in France with the victory also of the left. We have some promising developments in Spain. The left is a part of the government in Spain, and then the left is also part in Finland, of the government in Finland, and so we have some experience. And then we have promising development in Greece, because Syriza is still a very strong party of the left, and we will have elections in the next year, and there's a possibility that Syriza will win the elections. But for me it's very important to have a bigger cooperation between the left and the other forces. It's not always very easy, but we have to be in touch with the other forces, like the left of the social democratic parties, of the socialist parties. A big problem now are the Greens now concerning this cooperation, because in Germany they are really very in favor of supporting in the Ukraine in the war, sending arms and so on, and we are against. And therefore we have a big problem with the Greens. On the European level it's a little bit different, because we have on the European level also a cooperation with the European Party of the Greens. And therefore something is moving, and I think we need a broader alliance of the left and the progressive forces. For us it's very important the cooperation with the trade unions. As party of the European left, we have a very good relationship now. It was not the case in the past, but nowadays we have a very good cooperation with the European trade union organizations, with Introduo. This is the organization of the industrial trade unions in Europe. We have also European Trade Union Confederation, a very good cooperation, because we have we have common objectives, like a social ecological transformation. It's a big issue also for the trade unions, protecting the workers, but also transforming the industry under ecological points of aspects, and therefore that's very good. And we have to strengthen also our cooperation with social movements. I think in Latin America that's in particular a big issue, the cooperation with the social movements. But also in Europe we have now a cooperation with movements against the climate crisis, like for example Fridays for Future. It's very important, and to strengthen this cooperation I think it's very important for Europe. And so we have now a changed political panorama in Europe, and there is, in my opinion, some hope also to strengthen the left, because we have a very difficult economic and social situation, not only in Germany. The prices for energy and food are skyrocketing. It's the case in all the other European countries. And this offers also for us, for the left, the opportunity to strengthen their role in politics.
Well, Mr. Bierbaum, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For talking to us at Brasil de Fato. Thank you. Bom, esse foi o BDF Entrevista Internacional. Até o próximo programa.